So when I'm normally sharing this, it's normally with a group of people who are already in some way opening up to a greater part of themselves. Maybe you would call it on a spiritual path. I suspect we've got quite a wide audience here tonight, so I'll start at the beginning, so to speak. Self-realization. Is everybody familiar with the term? Yeah. And what it's pointing to? Yeah. What I'm speaking, I asked this partly for the reasons I've just said, but also yesterday I was in Liverpool, a much smaller group, and somebody asked me, "Oh, do you mean personal, or do you mean the universal self?" And I mean the universal self, the big self, the true self, self-realization, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. It's that I'm talking about. That's my whole focus. That's the whole focus of my sharing tonight, and indeed in all of my life, really. It might be worth just saying, I don't normally do this, but perhaps just to give you all a bit of context about this, and I think it's useful to understand this. This that I speak of, self-realization, is available and open to all, and I don't call it life's greatest gift and life's simplest gift for no reason. It is really available to all of us, not just the special few. This is one of the myths of the whole thing to do with self-realization. My background may be surprising, it may not. You know, born in Lancashire, as I said, in Manchester more accurately, brought up with a church background, had all that indoctrination that comes with that, and took a fairly standard path, went to university, did a degree in civil engineering, had a very successful career in civil engineering. Wasn't something that I would have expected from my background, which was pretty much working class. But it was that way. And probably around 2000 things started to change. I realized that actually, you know what, although I was on the outside looked to be a fairly calm individual, I remember being on a skiing holiday in Whistler, it was, in Canada around 2000, and was dreaming about work, and I thought, this has got to stop. This has got to stop. And it was at that point I took up meditation. And if I was to sort of offer you a trigger point as to where this all came from, that would probably be the most recent and key one. And I took it very, very seriously, and I meditated pretty much every day since, for at least half an hour a day. And a few years into that process, I really felt a strong calling to leave what was by then a pretty successful career in civil engineering behind, to follow the spiritual calling. I didn't really know what it was. I wasn't really aware so much of self-realization then. I'd heard of the Buddha and things like that, but you know, it wasn't on my radar, so to speak, and yet there was something calling me. 5 years later, I walked out of a very successful job, having just turned a massive business around for the company I work for. The client was happy, the staff were happy, and just left it all behind to pursue whatever this was that was calling me. And things really started to accelerate then. I'd already been pursuing by this time, in parallel with a very grounded career in civil engineering. A very grounded career in civil engineering. I'd started to pursue alternative healing and found out wondrous things that I didn't know that could happen. You may have heard of some of these things like Reiki, emotional freedom techniques, quantum touch. I studied and learned about all these things and actually practiced them as a sideline to my work, and with some amazing results both for me and for people I was sharing it with. But I'd realized, as all this was going on, there was something, a golden thread if you like, that was connecting all this, and I didn't quite know what it was. The meditation, as I say, was continuing. And around 2011, I had the first of what became a series of very profound spiritual experiences. And I'll say a little bit about that. I don't normally do that these days, but I think it's helpful for you, perhaps, if I do. So, firstly, this one came to me in a dream. And I was given some information. I won't go into the details, but let's just say in this dream I was made aware of something that if I just used my intention to connect with what this higher presence that was sat here called spheres, turned out to be spheres of light. That was all I needed to do. And I was an energy worker by this time. I'd given up work, woke up the next morning, remembered the dream, and just lay there in bed and said, okay, I remember that dream, I'll just do this. I'll just use my intention to connect with spheres of light. And the instant I did this, there was a huge rush of what I can only describe to you as energy. Heat, tingling, everything, the works. This may be news to some of you, it may be commonplace for some of you, I don't know. But this must have lasted maybe 15, 20 minutes. And I felt transformed in the process. I knew something had happened, and it turned out to be a shift in consciousness. The process continued, and 2 and a bit years on, after having explored this and shared this widely with people, because there's a very strong calling for me to do that, the most profound, and there have been a series of other experiences in between which I won't go into tonight, the most profound experience unfolded. This may or may not mean much to you, but I'll share it. So let's say it was in a meditative experience, a meditation, and suddenly there was no awareness of this body that you see before you. There wasn't even any awareness of the individual that you would know as Philip. An absolute stillness. A sense of eternity or the infinite. All of this being completely non-personal. No form, just pure awareness. An awareness that recognized, if these words mean anything to you, itself as itself. A remembrance of this. A sort of, aha, this is it. This is who I am, but not in a personal sense. Maybe you could use the word oblivion or bliss. Completely unequivocal in its awareness, in the knowing of what this was. I have no idea, if you were to put a measure of linear time, how long this took place for, you could say eternity, and it would be right. But in physical linear time that we're so used to, it might be 15, 20 minutes, it may be half an hour, it may be an hour, I don't know. I have no measure. And at some point in that process, remember, there was no form, there was no awareness of the form. There was the vaguest of recognition that, let's say, wasn't there a body here? And somewhere out of this eternity, this void, this eternal essence, two words emerged. And those two words were infinite, silence, and with it a recognition that whatever this was, this knowingness, this awareness, had chosen not only these two words. There was a sense of, these two words you must use to share this. And as the words were, let's say, a vibration, sounds of vibration, the vibration of those words, they were also heard. And at that point, this form, this body, or the awareness of it, perhaps more accurate, might be, reappeared. And you might say everything had changed. You might also say, equally accurately, nothing had changed. Everything had changed in that now there was beyond doubt the realization that this in fact was the self-realization that I'm talking about, and that is the subject of our shared gathering tonight. Beyond doubt. And nothing had changed in the realization that actually I, and this is a non-personal I, had always been that. And so, my friends, are you. This may be news to you. It may not. It matters not whether it means anything to you at this level. The one that's really hearing this or already knows this is this one here in your heart. This knowing is already there. And this life in this body that you have is an invitation to the experiential realization of that. That's all. And that is a beautiful invitation.